They send hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign nations. And you know what they're giving our people? $750. They're offering them $750 to people whose homes have been washed away.
Donald Trump continuing to push misleading information about the federal response to Hurricane Helene. Trump has used his very powerful megaphone at his rallies and on social media to endorse or make up, frankly, bogus claims. Claims the director of FEMA says are having a direct impact on their recovery efforts.
Frankly, that type of rhetoric is demoralizing to our staff that have left their families to come here and help the people of North Carolina. The biggest effect, I would say, is people that have been impacted are afraid to apply for our assistance. If I can't get them to apply, I can't give them the money and the resources that they're eligible for.
You know, people who have had their lives upended by a storm are now forced to deal with all of these conspiracy theories rather than focus on what they must do. And according to several accounts, FEMA's response has been satisfactory. Don't take it from us. Here's the mayor of Chimney Rock, North Carolina, reacting to the very false rumors that have been circulating around.
I got to be honest with you. I hear stuff like that. I mean, I'm here in the middle of this disaster. We're responding, and then somebody says, "Have you heard this?" And you just kind of laugh because it's so outlandish. I've been satisfied with it. I've heard a few rumblings of some complaints, but I mean, we haven't seen anything in Chimney Rock, that's for sure.
Joining me now, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore. He served as commander of Joint Task Force Katrina following the 2005 hurricane that devastated the Gulf Coast. He's also the author of Leadership in the New Normal. Thank you so much for being here. Look, FEMA now has a website set up. It's dedicated to addressing all of the false information, all of the rumors. I do wonder, what kind of impact have you seen this all have on the federal response?
Well, I think from my experience in Katrina, the targeted people are the survivors, and many of them don't have electricity, don't have media. But with current cell phones and as the internet come back online, they have access, it's demoralizing. And then that rumor gets spread. You know, we dealt with that in Katrina too, Laura. There were rumors of the government blowing levees and snipers, and you have to immediately engage with it through the media at large, as well as the great tactic that FEMA is using, and with the help of CNN and others who challenge those rumors and lies before they become a problem in the community.
You know, just thinking about the devastation of like a Katrina and beyond, and of course now, how do you combat that when it's difficult to even have people access their cell phones, their loved ones? That rumor mill could be out of your control. How do you address that misinformation on the ground?
Well, the governors need to have daily news conference with FEMA, with the National Guard. That is a routine, and it need to be a national news conference because it not only affect the people, the survivors, it affect the mood of the country and people confidence that the government is doing what they can to help people. But in a disaster, you're never there on time. You get there when you can because the disaster had an impact on airports, roads, communications, water accessibility, and you got to get people evacuated. So that's a disaster. If people are not complaining in a disaster, it wasn't a disaster, it was an inconvenience. And boy, did we have a big one with Helene. It was 600 miles long, affected 5 states. I've never seen one that big before, Laura.
You know, you make such a sharp point on the idea of what it does to the confidence in the government and the ability for people to have faith in the response, and then maybe even heed the warnings from the government about what to do with a future hurricane. How would you assess FEMA's response so far, specifically in places like North Carolina, where, I mean, we see these images, they are devastating.
We got to understand FEMA's role is to resource things that the governor needs. The governor hands his request to FEMA, and FEMA bring generators. They bring search and rescue teams. And if they need to, they will ask the Pentagon to bring more helicopters and troops. But the person in charge of the disaster preparedness and response is the governor. And FEMA is there to assist him with logistics.
You
It's
know,
news conference before the hurricane and tell people evacuate, but it's logistics, and that's what FEMA bring to include the entire Department of Defense if needed.
thank you. Just thinking about what needs to be done and the scope of this. And I couldn't believe when I saw this, Lieutenant General, because the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, and President Biden, they did speak by phone tonight. But then a White House official told us that DeSantis has not returned Vice President Harris's calls. Harris called that selfish. DeSantis tonight said this in response.
She has no role in this process. I'm in contact with the President of the United States. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign.
What do you make of this back and forth? Do you think that Governor DeSantis is accurate or woefully misguided?
I think this is a case of misguided that he could turn it into a talking point. But the vice president was decisively engaged in Katrina and would send in requests for information because they're hearing from constituents too inside that state. So they're a part of the government, the vice president. They need to know everything the president knows and to be there to assist the governor as he needs something. So I think that we need to move past this because this storm that's coming is going to be historic. Helene was a monster. This could be a historic storm facing over 3.5 million people. Elevation 10 feet in Tampa, 9 feet in St. Pete at best, and they could get 10 to 12 foot surge. So we need to focus on this storm, and hopefully that story will go away. And tomorrow we can focus on preparing and getting the logistics ready to respond, because we're going to need air, we're going to need land, and we're going to need sea search and rescue to be able to assist if this storm come in the way the weather people are talking about it, Laura.
Well, Lieutenant General Russell Honoré, we're also going to need you and your expertise. Thank you for joining us.
And the volunteers. Never forget the volunteers. Government ain't good enough to handle a storm by itself without the volunteers. And they're doing a great job.
A very important point. Thank you so much.